18 hours, we found pieces of the back seat. There are two guys in the Phantom Jet, and they were coming in very low in the water, over the water, and they got in trouble. And when you eject, the pilot goes out first, and then 7/10 of a second later, the guy in the back seat goes out right behind him so they don't hit each other. And when the pilot ejected, they were nosing over, and he had just enough altitude for his chute to open before he hit the water. And the guy in the back seat didn't make it. So we found pieces of the backseater's gear, and the captain comes down to combat at that point. He says, "Mr. Scherer, what do you think? Should we give up?" And I said, "No, sir. Now we know we're in the right area. Let's concentrate here." So I brought all the helicopters and airplanes over there, and we kept looking. And then about 2 hours later, I got this call from one of the helicopters. "Hermit, this is 350. We got him. We got him. We got him." Now the pilot was a lieutenant commander, 2.5 of these, and we found him. The helicopter found him, and everybody in CIC began to cheer, and the XO and the captain came down. They're slapping me on the back and everything like that. And I vectored the helicopter out toward, where they found the guy eventually. And about 15 minutes later, the captain calls. He says, "John, lay to the bridge. Some guy here wants to talk to you." Now, first of all, the captain never calls you by your first name, ever. Scherer, that's about it. That would have been a compliment. He said, "John, lay to the bridge." That means come to the bridge. There's some guy out here that wants to talk to you. Now, I'm exhausted. I've been on this radar scope for 20 hours. I'm so excited that we finally got one of these guys in the water. I'm thinking, why don't? And then I'm thinking, this is the captain, John. You better. I said, "Aye, aye, sir." So I go up on the bridge, and we're stopped in the water. The helicopter is about 30 meters off our starboard side, and of course we're just rolling in the water. And the pilot was in the water, and one of the swimmers from the helicopter was in the water putting the lift on the guy. And they're about to lift him out of the water. And the captain says he wants to know who the air controller was. Now there's 100 guys lined up along the starboard side of the ship, right? And we're all cheering and everything. And so I wave. I don't even know whether he sees me or not. And they pull him out of the water. He's about 3 or 4 feet out of the water. And he looks right at me and he salutes me. And I just started to cry. And I just, walked around to the port side. There's nobody over there except the lookout. And I stood back by the signal flags and I just wept. I wept. And it was in that moment that I realized that something in that experience, I had transcended myself. Does that translate? Yeah. Transcend? Yeah. I had gotten outside of my concept of who I was. It was my first experience of transformation. And I realized, and there's a chapter not in this book, my other book, where I say, I may have helped find his phantom. He had no way of knowing, but he had also helped me find my phantom. So this thing about public speaking is really about getting over yourself. Who are the two guys in the water out there? See? That's the question to ask yourself. You want to get over your nervousness. Ask yourself, what do these people need right here? I went to a meeting about a week ago. I just left a meeting where one of my staff people had to quit. And I was devastated. I mean, my whole operation back in America is built around her. She's the center of my operation. And she had to leave. And I just felt like somebody kicked me in the stomach. And I walked out of that meeting, got in my car, and went to a meeting at a bookstore to talk about the book. I didn't want to be there. I felt awful, terrible. And I walked in that room, and there were about 30 people sitting there. And when I walked in and saw those people, boom, I was right there. It was like, those people need to hear what you have to say, John. You give it to them. You just don't even worry about all this stuff you got going on inside. So I think a major piece of being a public speaker that's powerful, that people want to listen to, is it's not changing yourself. And as I say in the book, this is not about changing yourself. This is about coming home to yourself, your true self, the big self, not the little self that worries all the time about whether you're going to do okay, but the big self that can't wait for the next morning, can't wait to see the sunrise. That self, that's the one you want to speak from, that place right there. Okay, how much time do I have?
We don't count your time.
That's my timekeeper. Oh, no. Everything is, in Toastmasters, everything is timed. Everything is timed.
So now you're nervous.
Not at all. I've never stuttered since then. Never. It's, I was asked to speak to a conference of America. It was the American Speech and Hearing Association. Anyway, all the people that treat speaking and hearing disorders. So they treat stutterers. And they thought I would be an interesting person to come and speak because in the course of our conversation, they didn't know this when they called. They found out that I was a former stutterer. Well, that was even more of a reason to have me there. Then they found out about how I was cured, and they said, well, that's not valid. Why not? Well, you didn't go to the doctor. You didn't have your, you didn't know. Well, I said, believe me, I went to the doctor. I had a big doctor, a very big doctor in that experience. So it's interesting how if you haven't had a certain kind of treatment, then you can't be cured because you don't fit our treatment model. And I'm telling you that Toastmasters, I have many, many friends in Toastmasters. I became a magician when I was 12 years old. If you want me to do some magic for you some night, I'll come and do that for you. But the only time I didn't stutter was on stage. When I was in my magician persona, I never stuttered. The minute the show was over, the curtain closed, and the person came back to congratulate me and give me my check or whatever it was, I started stuttering again. So I knew that there was inside of me this being that was capable of being fully present with people, very powerfully, without any fear of that stuff. So I highly recommend that you buy this book. It's in English, so you can practice your English. It's on Amazon.com. But it is being translated. Eventually, we're going to put it in Polish, and we'll be publishing it here. But I want to give you what it's called 5 Questions That Change Everything, except the one thing that never needs to change. The thing is, you don't need to change yourself. You need to come home to yourself, and that changes everything. Okay. So, question for you. Jedno pytanie. Are you, as a human being, are you a finished product or are you a work in progress? What would you say?
A work in progress.
Absolutely.
Always
I've never had anybody say, I'm a finished product. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. I'm going to say, Jesus, you're here with us. I didn't realize that you were here. So, everybody's a work in progress. Everybody. That's why we're here. I think we show up with an assignment. It's like we're going to school. We were sent to school, and here we are. We're in school. We were sent with an assignment, a 3-part assignment. Figure out who you are. Continually figure out, discover and rediscover more and more and more about who you are. Express yourself, that higher self, more and more fully into the world in a way that makes a positive contribution to the way things are. So it's discover who you are, express it in the world in a way that makes it. I think that's why we're here. So I say to people, where do you do, if you're a work in progress, where do you do your progressing? Where do you do your growing? Where do you do your developing? People say, well, I go to my church, my synagogue, my mosque, I go to seminars, I read great books, I do all these ones. I go, fantastic, cudownie. Ale, you're missing one of the most important classrooms.
The real world.
And that's the workplace. It's where you spend more and more of your time than anywhere else. You spend more of your awake time at work than you do with your loved ones.